You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dan's World. Today, we are going to put the show in your hands. It's going to be an all viewer questions episode. Now, me being me, we haven't done one of these episodes in about 6 months live, but me being me, I had the show prepped and ready to go, and didn't realize until about 5 minutes ago that I had forgotten to switch it from unlisted to public. So the episode that's the most reliant on participation is the one that I gave you the least notice for. That's just typical of me. Maybe in a year or two, I'll get the basics of doing this live show down, but that doesn't matter because no matter what size our audience is, hopefully you've got some good questions for me. If you want to make sure that I get to your questions today, then you can leave a super chat and I'll definitely read your question. I'll also be looking over here at the comment section. I didn't even think to ask if you can hear me or you can see me. That's how I always open the show. Maybe I'm getting a little more confident in my skills as a live broadcaster, that the first thought in my head isn't, I hope I didn't screw up the camera or the microphone. New positioning, by the way. I changed the arm around on my desk, but I actually ordered a desktop stand because I think that this is just, it feels like the microphone's going to attack me. Plus, my computer's on this side now because the arm is on this side, and I realize I'm going to have to do the whole show with my left hand. I'm a hot mess today. I really am, but I'm a hot mess most days, so I guess that's not really different. So whatever you want to talk about today, if you want to talk about Survivor, boy, do I have thoughts on Survivor. If you want to talk about whatever's going on in the world of movie news, the entertainment world, anything at all, I certainly got some passionate feelings with my show last week, the Christopher Nolan show, which I figured I probably would, but it was statistically one of my most disliked shows, although it was still only 10%. That's not terrible. I'm not out here looking to rage bait, but there were a lot of people that disagreed with me on last week's show. I get it. I was very motivated in my thoughts, and a lot of other people were very motivated in their thoughts as well. So I get it. Sometimes I'm not going to please everybody, but it was a fun show to do. It seemed like a lot of people wanted to share their thoughts and get engaged with the show, which is great because the live show, that's what it's here for. It's here for discussion. It's here for questions. It's here for all that stuff. And so today we'll be taking your questions. I see some that are already coming in. Let me just see. Let's see. The ghost behind me. The ghost behind you is a hot mess too. Can you guys see something that I can't? Because I don't see a ghost behind me. Then again, there are a lot of things that I just don't even notice with the channel or with the set. I actually, I moved the mic stand for charts this week, and I got multiple, I don't know if I want to say complaints, but comments about the fact that I put my arm on the desk. Like my arm positioning was like, you have a Popeye arm. It's too distracting. Or I didn't know you had arms. And it's like, to me, I just thought I was, kind of relaxing. But no, anything and everything you do here on YouTube is fodder for discussion. Yeah, there you go. All right, let's look. See, I've got a few comments that have come in already. So let's get to the first one. Wildwood by Leica trailer looks awesome. That's from Savinus97. I saw that the Wildwood trailer was out. I didn't get a chance to look at it. But Leica in general does great work. I know that Wildwood has been delayed at least once or twice from the release schedule, but I love great stop motion animation. And if you're talking about consistent quality work in the world of stop motion, which not many people are doing anymore, then Leica, I think, is world-class there. So I'm excited. Travis Knight with Masters of the Universe. It's one of the reasons that I'm weirdly hopeful about Masters of the Universe because Travis Knight's done so much great work, and I know that he really is passionate about what he does. So Insheer01 says, thoughts on Dr. Pulaski from season 2 of The Next Generation. Wow. Of all the things I thought I would get a question about, Dr. Pulaski on season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation wasn't one of them. If you're not familiar with that character, season 2 of Next Generation, Gates McFadden, who played Dr. Crusher, left the show for a season, and they brought in Diana Muldaur, who was an actress who was on LA Law and probably a bunch of other shows that I'm the only one who remembers. She was the new doctor, and from what I recall, the hope was that she was going to be this sort of stern Dr. McCoy type figure. And she is a polarizing figure in Star Trek The Next Generation. She was, an older lady. She was, gruff and rough around the edges. I actually have never really minded Dr. Pulaski. I think that she brought a different energy to the show. She wasn't Dr. Crusher, that's for sure. And I think a lot of people just don't like it because that's the one season that Dr. Crusher's not in the show. But I think I liked it. I mean, she would always, particularly, she would challenge Captain Picard a lot. She would sort of, bump philosophies with him and everything. And I think that if she had continued on the show, that she would have been as accepted as the rest of the cast. I think that a lot of people just look at her as this kind of odd character out because she was only on the show for one season. But I actually liked her energy. I think that the shortcomings of season 2 were not her fault. I mean, it wasn't her idea to do a Commander Riker flashback episode in the second season. And the writing was still finding its footing. I think if she'd been around for season 3, when the show kind of started going through its peak years, that she would have been right there with it. But I always liked Dr. Crusher and the fact that she had a history with Captain Picard. So I didn't mind that she came back. But yeah, I think that Dr. Pulaski suffered from the show kind of being in a weird creative place and only being on the show for one season. AI or AL109 says, what do you think will be the next franchise to get a legacy sequel? Crossing fingers that Lego movie is next. I mean, it feels kind of too soon to get a legacy sequel for the Lego movie just because we're only a little over 10 years from the first movie coming out. Yeah, legacy sequel. That's because I feel like you have to have been gone long enough to be able to bring back characters that people actually miss, like we did with the Force Awakens, where we're bringing back, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia and all those for the first time. So it feels like a franchise that's got to be like 20 years down the road. I mean, Predator has been kind of hinting around and playing with the idea of a legacy sequel and bringing back Arnold Schwarzenegger. And unfortunately, Father Time is going to determine how much longer you can have on that clock. But I think it's very likely, of all the ones where I could say like, oh, this is a franchise where we haven't seen the original characters in a long time. I think Predator's the most likely because we are sort of in a new Predator renaissance, if you will. The franchise is in a really strong spot. And I would like to see, I know the animated version, I think they maybe had a version where Dutch was back. So I think you could see him come back in animation or even in live action. So I think that Predator is the next franchise I would say, oh yeah, I think they're going to do a legacy sequel. Jamie Evans 8985 says, rank all 50 seasons of Survivor from best to worst. Well, okay, not all Survivor questions, mainly because I haven't seen all 50 seasons. And I should note, please, ranking questions are a little bit tougher for me to do. I should have put that disclaimer up top. So I probably won't be able to be as thorough on ranking questions. So I don't think I can rank all 50 seasons of Survivor from best to worst, because I'd have to go back and watch about 10 or 15 of them. But off the top of my head, I mean, the first few, I'd say the first 5 seasons or so were really not, there was just something special about it. And they were actually out there surviving. I mean, the Africa season where they're out in the wilderness and there's lions and stuff around the camp. The fact that they're actually scraping to survive. And I think that the first maybe 10 seasons or so, or 15, were also a lot more about interpersonal dynamics and the human part of survival, and not so much about the twists and everything else. So those first few seasons for me are hard to beat. The Colby season and Tina, the Ethan season in Africa, of course, the original season in Borneo, which is an iconic season in television history. I mean, if you talk about reality TV and stuff like that. And then I remember Heroes versus Villains for me being one that I was like, oh yeah, and the first couple All-Star seasons, because it was a smaller pool to draw from, you'd attached yourselves to those people much more so than when you're drawing back on 30 or 40 or 50 seasons of Survivor. So that one I remember as well. So those are the ones that jump to the top of my head. The Russell Hantz seasons, he was a very divisive person on the show, but you have to admit he made for great television when it comes to Survivor. And then, like I say, the new years I don't know as much, but Survivor 50 I'm enjoying more or less. Based on your interactions with both, who would you rather get high with, Kevin Smith or Seth Rogen? Well, I don't really do that at all anymore. I had my phases, but I've had a brief interaction with Seth Rogen. He came in and did movie fights once, and he was super nice and like super into it. But I mean, Kevin Smith, I've met him a few times. I thought as I recall, didn't he say he had quit for a while, or maybe he hasn't quit anymore? But I mean, I just love to talk movies with Kevin Smith, high or not. And so I'd have to go with Kevin Smith. I'm sure Seth Rogen would be awesome. It's just I've had very limited interaction with him. Wesley Petrelli says, Dan, thank you for addressing my comment about the Spider-Man Brand New Day spoiler on the recent charts episode. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did respond to your comment earlier today. Yeah, I mentioned a certain character's presence in Spider-Man Brand New Day on charts this week. And Wesley said that said that it was a spoiler because they'd been avoiding any information about the movie, and I do sympathize with that. Where it gets tough for me as somebody that covers movies and stuff is that this was a character who had been announced many months ago. This was a character who had appeared in the first trailer of the movie. And a character who is also relevant currently to the MCU. And so that's what's difficult to me is I don't report on rumors. I don't report on, I heard this character, might be. If it's not confirmed, I won't talk about it at all. But when it's a movie that's coming out that's had a trailer out for a while and it's publicly, available knowledge, it's been well publicized, it's been announced, they're in the publicity materials, it's tough for me to talk around the movie without mentioning it if I think it's relevant to another story, because I understand that some people don't want to know anything about it, but that information is out there, and if it's way out there, if Marvel's the one putting it in out in the forefront, it's tough for me to not mention it at all because it's relevant. So I understand the balance. I try to strike a good balance. I appreciate you being understanding about that as well. Generally, my rule is if something is publicized out there on the posters, in the trailer, for me, it's a little bit more fair game than like a rumor or a leak, which I don't even read leaks and stuff like that because I don't want to know. Honestly, if they're not already telling me. Wells 009 says, have you ever considered making a Dan Murrell FAQ that explains your stance on-demand lists and spells out your knowledge of the critical drinker? Wow. Well, I think those are two very different subjects. My stance on-demand lists is just that it's really tough for me to do off the top of my head, and I just don't think it makes for very good live streaming. My thoughts on the critical drinker or any other YouTuber, I mean, that's a whole separate thing. The thing with YouTube channels is the drama side of YouTube is so big and people want to dive into it that anytime anybody says anything about another channel, then it becomes a thing. And then somebody runs over to the other person and says, hey, did you hear that this person said this about you? And then that person will make a video. And then those fans run back to the other person and say, hey, did that person respond? And he said, and it becomes a whole thing. I see the analytics of my channel. I know that there is a somewhat significant overlap between my viewers and and the people that watch The Critical Drinker. I know people that watch The Critical Drinker. That's fine. I've said this before, and I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. With this is that a lot of his stuff is not my particular cup of tea. That's okay. I'm sure a lot of my stuff probably wouldn't be his particular cup of tea. And by the way, he is many orders of magnitude bigger than I am on YouTube. I do not consider him my peer or my equal. He runs a channel with a much bigger reach and with a much larger size than this channel. And so I don't think it's really relevant what my thoughts on The Critical Drinker are because there's no competition there. I mean, the channel is massive and I'm very happy with the size of my channel, but it's much smaller. This idea that everybody on YouTube has to comment on what everybody else on YouTube is doing, I think all it does is stir up drama between channels. That's not something that I'm really interested in. What I watch in my personal time, I don't think is relevant to what I say here on the channel. But the main thing that I've said, and I've said it many times before, not really my cup of tea a lot of times. I have issues with things here or there, but that's fine. I'm not looking to air that out or start some kind of a feud or, it's just not, not necessarily what I would choose to watch. But I respect the fact that there are many in my audience who do. He shares his worldview and his thoughts on things. I share my worldview and my thoughts on things. And that's where it ends. It ends at the water's edge for me, as far as I'm concerned. TG7849 says, have you read the books of Project Hail Mary, The Odyssey, and Dune? Just picked these up at Barnes & Noble and looking forward to comparing them to the films. I have not read Project Hail Mary. I read The Odyssey in high school in English class. I had a teacher who I loved what the way that he did it was, I think it was this teacher who, we wouldn't try to tear through books like they were things to be checked off of a list. We would we would really go deep into a book for a few weeks. So I think we spent 3 or 4 weeks on the Odyssey and really went into the characters and the history of it and all of that. And I remember actually enjoying the Odyssey because it didn't feel like a chore. This was the teacher who really brought things to life in the classroom and wanted to engage discussion and everything like that. So I did read the Odyssey in high school. And Dune, I've talked about this a few times. Dune, I had not read the book when I saw Dune, the first Dune movie, Dune Part 1, Denis Villeneuve's first movie. I read the book between Part 1 and Part 2, so I could kind of look at Part 2 through having read the book through that lens. So yes, I have read the book, and it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't think that you should. A lot of people, when they're reading a book, will kind of judge the quality of a movie from a direct one-to-one comparison. How accurate was it? And I think it should really be like whether you're getting the spirit of the book right. And with Dune, I think that Denis Villeneuve got the spirit of the book right. And there were some things that he left out that I'm like, oh, I like that in the book. But I think there are also some things that he streamlined or made a little bit more digestible for the movie version that I thought worked as well. So I would say if you're going to do the comparison thing, don't do it like as a one-to-one thing where you're judging the movie by how faithful it is to the book. I would judge it by how does it get the spirit right? Does it get the feel of the story right? Darth Muffet says, how do you think The Breadwinner will do now that tickets are discounted? Would you put it in the top 10 for the summer? You should get a mulligan. No, if you didn't see this, Nate Bargatze, who's I think a really funny comedian, has a movie coming out called The Breadwinner. And he announced that he and the theater chains are kind of working together to offer tickets to that movie at a discounted rate. I don't know exactly what that rate is going to be. Would I put it, even with the discount, would I put it in the summer top 10? Not necessarily. I mean, it's a low to mid-budget comedy. And Nate Bargatze is certainly a very popular comedian, but I still don't think I would put it in the summer top 10 against a lot of the other films that are coming out. I don't think it'll hit that height, even with the discounted rates. Maybe I'm wrong. But I like that there is a concerted effort. He said, my movie's made for the whole family. It's made for everybody to go see. So I want people to be able to go see it, to afford tickets to be able to see it. I like that. I love that. And I love that theater chains seem to be working with them because anything that gets people in theaters, I think, is a win for the industry. And if it's okay with the studios and it's okay with the theaters, then I'm all for discounted rates. I've been saying for a long time ticket prices need to come down and that studios and theater chains need to work together in order to do that. And I think this is an example that can happen. You can have a cooperative effort between the two to make that happen. So I'm all for it. And if the movie does great, that's wonderful because that means more people are going into theaters and it's not costing them as much to go, which I think is also great. Pentaholic 88 says, do you think you can do a part 2 review for the rest of The Boys? Series finale is next week and fans have been disappointed with this newest season. I was actually sitting here today thinking about that because I have been watching this final season of The Boys and I do share a lot of the frustrations that I've been reading online, particularly with the structure and the pace of the season and what the show's been building up to versus what we've gotten so far. There's only one episode left. And it feels to me a lot like this last season has really been stuck in neutral. And I know that Eric Kripke has his own thoughts on that. And he said that, well, it's because we're developing character and it's not going to mean anything if the characters aren't developed. But it's the 5th season of the show. We've had 4 seasons to develop the characters. I do feel like the pace has been lacking. So I have thought about, I'm not going to do anything till the season's over because I'll see how it turns out. I've watched the newest episode. I watched it last night. Or late last night. But I was thinking about once the finale is done, I don't know if it would be necessarily a full review of the show, maybe more of an analysis of the 5th season. But I have thought about doing a Boys episode because I do share some concerns with how the season has gone, and then we'll see what happens in the finale. But it's going to be tough to wrap everything up with what's left. And so, very possibly, there could very well be an episode specifically about The Boys season 5. Dylan Fitzsimmons 2278 says, thoughts on Boogie Nights? Saw on Letterboxd that you rewatched it recently. Yeah, I was thinking about doing a Paul Thomas Anderson video, and it's just been kind of a struggle to get things done lately for various reasons. But I did rewatch his movies and watch some of them for the first time. So Boogie Nights is a movie that I hadn't seen in a very long time. And so many people have it as like their top Paul Thomas Anderson film, and it had just been so long since I seen it. I didn't really have an opinion because my thoughts were 20 years old maybe on what I thought of the movie. I like it. I think it's a good movie. I think that it shows a lot of signs of a filmmaker still finding his footing and finding his voice. It feels a lot more inspired by other filmmakers than many other Paul Thomas Anderson movies do, specifically Martin Scorsese. Which is not bad. I'm not knocking him, but you can see to me a lot more fingerprints of other filmmakers than his later films, which feel very him. I think it's too long. I think it loses some momentum about halfway through. But I think it's a good movie, but I don't consider it to be necessarily one of his absolute best movies. Although the ones that are kind of up there for me, a lot of people would say they don't like as much as Boogie Nights because they're not as vibrant and they don't move as fast as Boogie Nights. So it's a good movie. It shows a lot of talent, but for me, it's really more of an example of how talented he was going to be. And don't get me wrong, it's an exceptionally well-made film, but it was more of like a preview of the master filmmaker that Paul Thomas Anderson was going to be than a fully formed example of how great he is as a director. Still very good, still very well made. Lynn GZS says, does Hollywood, quote unquote, feel more divided? It feels like there are more schisms around Gaza or AI, or has it always been like that? It's just new topics. I mean, I can't speak for everybody in Hollywood, but I think what we've seen is that the scope of things has gotten so big and it's on such a grand scale that they can't be under the surface anymore. Like there have always been conflicts in Hollywood. There's always been differing opinions and people of different political persuasions, publicly or not publicly, or conflicts about stuff in the industry. But generally, they've been sort of more localized. But when you have something like Gaza, which is impossible to ignore, or something like AI, which is impossible to ignore within the industry, then I feel like the lines become much more public because you can't really fly under the radar when you express your opinion about either one of those things. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Hollywood is more divided. I would say that the issues have become so prominent that those divisions, those cracks are more visible than they would be otherwise. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing in all cases. I think it's good to know where people fall and what they think on certain things. But it's just, as with everything else in the public discourse, I think everything has elevated so much and is now on such a grand stage that you just can't fly under the radar anymore. Stubble McShave says, Peter Jackson is working on a new 1010. PJ stepped away from directing after his friend and DP passed away. Is 1010 his first step back to live action? I don't know. I saw today as well that he said he was working on a new 1010 movie. I think he said for a while, like you said, he started on it a while ago. Peter Jackson, for me, has kind of earned the right to do whatever it is he wants to do. The Lord of the Rings is kind of his. I'm not going to compare him to Orson Welles because Orson Welles had a troubled life and a difficult time getting his creative work vision realized after Citizen Kane. But I think that Peter Jackson, when you're a filmmaker, I think it's probably nice to know that the thing you'll be remembered for is in your rearview mirror. And what you do from here on out is not really going to affect that very much. The Lord of the Rings will always be there and his stamp will always be on it. Maybe that's encouraging. Maybe you have a certain sense of freedom. And I felt that from Peter Jackson. I felt that he feels like, okay, well, listen, I've done my master work. So let's just do things I'm interested in. I think with Orson Welles, it was more a case of pressure. I made Citizen Kane at 20 something years old, and now everyone wants me to top it. I just want Peter Jackson to make the movies that he's passionate about. Documentary has certainly been a passion of his. He was passionate about Lord of the Rings. He was less passionate about The Hobbit, and I think you could tell. He said as much. He said, "Listen, I came on to do The Hobbit because they said if I don't do it, then it's not going to happen, and I wanted it to happen." And it was a much shorter prep period, and so I want an engaged, excited Peter Jackson. So if 1010 is what he wants to do, and he feels like he wants to resume development on that, that's great. But I think that it seems to him that he feels a certain amount of comfort that his legacy is now firmly intact, and he can now follow whatever direction he wants to. Because before Lord of the Rings, he was kind of that filmmaker anyway. He was just kind of doing what he thought was fun and cool. The Magician says Pulaski actor was also on an episode of the original series. That's correct. Yes, I neglected to mention that. Diana Muldaur was a guest on an episode of Star Trek, the original series, and then was a regular on Star Trek, The Next Generation years and years later. And I love that there was crossover sometimes between actors on both shows. Heroasaurus says, if you made a movie, what genre and themes would you explore? A couple people have asked me that, I think, in the past. And my go-to has always been, I think I'd like to make a comedy. I just enjoy writing comedy. And I feel like this might be the imposter syndrome kicking in, but I feel like I don't have a required profound life experience to write a drama, or maybe it's just that I don't think I have the gene in me that makes me think that my insight into the human condition is worth anything, or that I could translate it accurately to a dramatic film. But comedy, I'm a lot more confident in, and it's because I mean, with Honest Trailers, with Joe and Spencer and Danielle and Lon and everybody else that wrote on the show, I wrote comedy for many years, and so I feel like that I have an okay grasp on what might make people laugh, and I think you can still do great things in comedy that are kind of as effective as some dramas. So comedy, I think, would be something that I would explore. As far as the themes, it just kind of depends. I think I'd like to write a meaningful story that's also a comedy. But yeah, comedy would be the genre that I'm drawn to the most. The Magician writes, rewatched through TNG recently and forgot how adversarial Pulaski was towards Data early on. Eased off as the season progressed, but so maybe that was part of her character growth. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like Pulaski is Data in particular. She was very standoffish with, and I think maybe that's also because they were trying to write her as kind of a Dr. McCoy-like character and create that energy he had with Spock, because Dr. McCoy was very standoffish with Spock because he was the Vulcan. So Dr. Pulaski would be standoffish with Data because he's an android. But I actually like that she softened to him throughout the season. And it actually, I mean, boy, we're going to go deep here. It actually goes into some of the themes of the season with The Measure of a Man, where Data is put on trial to defend his existence as a person. So that season even delved into Data being a person versus being a thing. And Dr. Pulaski comes in sort of thinking that Data is this thing, this computer, not inhuman type thing. Doesn't even, well, I say Data, why do you care when I call you Data? And he's like, well, my name is Data. I think that was part of her character arc. And again, because she was only on for one season, then I think that was abbreviated. But that was another thing that I liked about the show is, that she and Data had this interaction, but it wasn't kind of stuck in the ground and never changed. Drew Skizzy says, watching Mando season 3 in 2026 is rough. I miss Andor. I miss Andor too. It's tough to judge things against Andor because Andor is such a great show. There aren't many shows, period, that are as good as Andor, let alone Star Wars shows. But Mandalorian season 3 was also not my favorite season of the show. Dylan Fitzsimon says, 2278 says, thoughts on Meet the Parents and its sequels. Well, geez, it's been 26 years now. Meet the Parents came out in 2000, year 2000, and I enjoyed it. I don't know. I think maybe at some point I saw Meet the Fockers. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I never saw Little Fockers. So I don't really have any thoughts to share there. But Meet the Parents is one of those movies that I could have worked just fine if it was just one movie. And that's what you saw a lot in Hollywood 30, 40, 50 years ago that you don't see as much now, is it's okay to just make one hit movie and that's it. Call it a day. Hey, we made a hit movie. That's great. We don't need to make any more. But everything that does well now, they're like, okay, what's the sequel? And I know that they kind of set that up like, oh, we got to meet his parents. And then Dustin Hoffman and Barbra Streisand. That's some good casting for Greg's parents. And I don't remember disliking Meet the Fockers, but for me, it felt kind of like the same movie again. So I think that it's just the result of Hollywood and how Hollywood works, which is like a hit can't just be a hit. 9 times out of 10, they got to make a sequel. But I don't have no thoughts on the third movie. I never saw it. TG7849 says 2019 and 2023 have been my favorite years for movies in recent years. Can't wait for 2026 to join that list. Boy, I hope so too. Both of those movies produced some great films, and if we can get to the end of 2026 and say that this was another movie on that level, that'd be great. I think there are great movies that come out every year. Last year, I think, produced a lot of really, really good movies. Is there one that I would say is an all-time great? Maybe. We'll see. But I love that every 4 or 5 years we get one where it seems like at the end of the year, we're like, there's 5 or 6 stone cold classics that came out this year. I'd love it if we got there by the end of this year. Sahib Singh 9897 says, why don't you do more show reviews for the major IPs? TV show reviews for me are, it's not that I don't enjoy them. It's just that they are time consuming in the sense of like, I have to watch every episode of every show. And it's also kind of like a movie where if I get to the end of the season and my thoughts are just like, oh, it's okay. I don't really find that interesting for me, not even necessarily for the audience, but for me to devote time to do a review, especially to a show where I think, you'd have to delve much more than even a movie. It just doesn't seem interesting for me to do a review of a show and be like, it's fine. It's okay. For a movie, that's a little bit easier because it's a 2-hour commitment. I come home, I write up my thoughts. If it's a short review, that's fine. But for a TV show or a TV season, then it's much more like, the time invested in that is a lot more, both in watching the show and writing the review and recording and editing the review. So I generally just try to make things that I'm interested in. And so there are times where I'll watch a TV show from a major IP like Star Wars or Marvel, and I'll finish it and I'll be like, this is fine. I think I was that way with Daredevil Born Again. I might have reviewed the first couple episodes, but when I got to the end of the first season, I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't have much to say other than, yeah, all right, it's okay. And that to me just doesn't make the most interesting review. So for me, generally, I will review something that I feel strongly about in some way or another. It's kind of another reason I didn't do Alien Earth. I think there's a question about that last week, is I was definitely going to review it 75% of the way through the season. And by the end, it was much more like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not as excited about that. I try to make videos about things I'm excited about personally. Wells 009 says, my last question was mostly a joke because those are two things I always see you being asked. Yeah, I know. It is a funny joke. I agree. It was a funny joke. But they're also, you're right. They're legitimate questions, and Critical Drinker particularly is something that everybody wants to know what I think about it. And it's like, Damian Fenton 3880 says, pick a franchise and then give a short elevator pitch aimed at someone who doesn't watch much TV or movies, explaining why it's worth getting into. Ooh, man, that's a multi-part question. So pick I guess it would have to be a franchise I love, and then give a short elevator pitch as far as why it is or isn't worth, or why it is worth getting into. I mean, for me, the go-to is always Star Trek, because people think that Star Trek is nerdy, and it is nerdy because it's about sci-fi, and there are very nerdy episodes. But particularly with Star Trek: The Next Generation. But you get this in all iterations of Star Trek, is once you look past the spaceships and the aliens and the goofier episodes, it's a show about relationships. And it's also a show about hope. It's a show about this hope of a future where there is still conflict and there are still problems, but we live in a world where everyone is working together cooperatively to solve those problems. And it's very aspirational. I think now more than ever, the idea of a future where not only the planet Earth, but all of the planets in the galaxy have many of them have banded together to make the universe a better place. And even with the people that you have conflicts with, it's not all war and hatred. It's about trying to find peace and an alternative solution. That's one of the reasons why a lot of the new Star Trek shows didn't work for me so much. It's because they were very angry and dark and violent. And I'm not going to be a gatekeeper and say Star Trek can't be that. But for me, Star Trek at its best is when it's not that, is when it is about hope and finding a better way out. That's why I love Captain Picard so much, because that was his whole thing: is let's avoid bloodshed, let's avoid war, let's find a better way out of this situation. And so my elevator pitch for Star Trek would be: I know it sounds nerdy, but the characters are well drawn and well written. It really is about an aspirational future, and at the end of the day, it's also about the problems that we face every day. If you ignore the fact that there's somebody in butthead costuming, a big Ferengi with big ears and a butthead, or ridges on their forehead, it's about how to solve society's problems and how to confront them in a really honest way. And a lot of the characters are struggling with that. Spock in the original series, Worf and TNG. A lot of the characters on DS9, I haven't seen all of DS9, but are sort of finding their way in the world and conflicted about things. So I think it's very universal, even though it seems to be very nerdy and geeky. That's my elevator pitch. I guess that was a pretty long elevator ride. Maybe we were going to the top of the Willis Tower, which I'll still call the Sears Tower. Drew Skizzy says, quick thoughts on those last two tribal councils. Okay, so this is it looks like we got some Survivor 50 questions. So I'm going to give my blanket spoiler alert, that I will be going into the details in the last two episodes of Survivor. There's a new one tonight. I will definitely be watching tonight. So on last week's show, I think I said a lot about Rick Devens and the Mr. Beast coin. But last week, last week they had another twist, of course, and I don't like the twists on this show. The Mr. Beast twist and last week's twist only worked because the Survivor gods made it so that it would work. Because on last week's show, they revealed that at the immunity challenge, one person would win immunity. So there were 9 people left. One person would win immunity, and then that person would get to vote in 2 tribal councils, and they split the tribe into 2 tribes, a tribe of 4 on this side, a tribe of 4 on that side, and the person who won immunity, Jonathan, who could vote twice, which I think is a way outsized a prize. But also, they picked those tribes by drawing rocks. And I was reading somewhere that there are a lot of people with hidden immunity idols and advantages, etc. And there's a player named Suri. She's a returning player. She's played the game several times. She's been voted out. I know at least one time she was voted out because she was on a tribe where everybody had immunity and she didn't. So she didn't get voted out. She just was eliminated from the game because everybody else couldn't get voted out. And I read somewhere that there was calculus where that could have happened to her again, where she could have ended up on a tribe with 3 other people that also all had immunity, and she would have been eliminated. And I'm telling you, the fan base would have absolutely rioted if that had happened. Survivor's so lucky it didn't happen. They've been playing with fire with these twists. I hate these twists. Let them play the game. You got supposedly the best Survivor players of all time on your island for the 50th anniversary, and you're not letting them play the game. You keep throwing them under the bus with these stupid twists, and the Survivor gods keep saving you. But I'm sure the twists will keep coming because Jeff Probst loves twists. So anyway, I can feel the people tuning out right now. Last week, there were 2 tribal councils. On one of them, I thought it was a great maneuver. So you had Rick Devens and his ally, whose name was Emily, and they were trying to figure out how to. Rick Devens had an idol, so they were trying to convince people that he was going to play it on her. But was he actually going to play it on himself? He did end up playing it for her, I think. Wait, no, he played it for himself. Yes, he played it for himself. But they had gotten the vote split in such a way that Suri, who I was talking about, would have been voted out because they split the votes the wrong way based on who they thought the immunity idol was going to be played on. But Suri had an advantage, which was an extra vote. And that advantage allowed her to basically tie the game because she voted 1 for Rick Devens and 1 for Emily. And so it was tied at the end. And then on the revote, they voted Emily out. And so Suri had this advantage and she used it, and it saved her, because if she hadn't used it, she would have been voted out because she has good survivor instincts. That was one tribal council. Let's go to the other tribal council. There's another returning player named Ozzy. The viewer numbers have got to be dropping like a stone, but you got me started on Survivor. There's another returning player named Ozzy. This is his 3rd or 4th time playing Survivor. He has been allied with Suri from the very beginning, and she has been carrying him through this game because she has great social instincts. And Ozzy, I like him as a player. He was my favorite every time I've seen him on the show. Ozzy has 0 social instincts. They get split up into 2 different tribes. They're completely apart from each other. Ozzy thinks he knows that he's not getting voted out. He has an immunity idol in his pocket. He could play it at tribal council, and if anybody votes for him, those votes don't count. He has an immunity idol in his pocket, and he decides he's going to do what's called jury management. So he goes to Aubrey, who he thinks is absolutely going to get voted out. No question in his mind, because he trusts his tribe mates, which is a dumb thing to do in Survivor. He goes to her and basically says, well, I know you're getting voted out, so I'm going to pitch my game to you right now and tell you why you should vote for me at the last tribal council, because I'm going to tribal council. Suri is my ally. We're number 1 and number 2. So we're going to the end together, which, by the way, nobody knew. So that's, and they have been, and Suri had been very careful about making sure that nobody knew that. He spills all that information, basically saying like, well, you're going to get voted out anyway, so I'm going to tell you my whole game plan. And by the way, also kind of throw my allies under the bus. Well, Aubrey does what you should do in Survivor, because she was probably going to get voted out. She goes to everybody else and says, hey, listen, Ozzy just spilled his entire game plan to me. He's going all the way to the final 2 with Suri. They've been allies the whole time. You need to vote him out right now because he's in a position of strength. So one of the stupidest things I've ever seen anybody do on Survivor. And again, nothing against Ozzy. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen any player do in Survivor. You never spill that kind of information. That information is what keeps you alive in that game, what people know and what people don't know. It's what keeps you alive in this game. It was a stupid, stupid move. So we go to the tribal council. Ozzy has another one of his allies there, Rizzo, who I don't really know because I didn't watch the last season. Rizzo could save Ozzy by telling him he needs to play his idol, because Suri manipulated it to get word back to him with the other tribe, because she's great at playing this game. But Rizzo, I think, rightfully thought, well, wait a minute, he just blew up the game. If I save him, then it's going to be bad for me, because I'm also in this kind of group here. I'm going to be outed as one of his allies. So he doesn't save Ozzy and tell him to play his idol. But here's the thing. You shouldn't have to tell Ozzy to play his idol. You're on a tribe of 4 people plus another guy with immunity who's not going to get votes. When you're in a tribe where only 4 people can get votes and it takes 3 people to send you home, you always play your idol. And Ozzy had a nightmare where he didn't play his idol and he got sent home, and he still didn't play his idol and he got voted out. He went home with an immunity idol in his pocket. So I was rooting for Ozzy. I really, really was. But the fact of the matter is he needed Suri's social skills to survive the game, because the second that they were apart, he blew up his own game. He blew it up by sharing too much information, and he blew it up by not playing his immunity idol. And I'm sure that has tortured him for however long it's been since that show was filmed. I don't envy him. I'm not going to sit here and say he's stupid or an idiot or whatever, because you don't know what it's like to play Survivor in that moment. But from my position as a Survivor fan, he did 2 of the stupidest things that you can do in Survivor. One of them, the idiotic decision to completely spill your game plan to somebody that isn't voted out yet. And number 2, you got to play your idol right there. So I was sad to see him go, but he was the architect of his own demise. He really was. If he played his idol like he should have, he'd still be there. Aubrey would have gone home, and now everybody else is in a stronger position, which I think makes the show a little bit more interesting. Okay, that's that. Who's your winner pick for Survivor 50? Oh, that's a good question. This is from the cheapest critic. See, Ozzy getting voted out, I think, throws everything into disarray. I would love, listen, if Suri gets to the finals, if she gets to the final tribal council, she's absolutely going to win, because not only is she a beloved player, not only does she have the social skills required to win the game, she has actually been a masterful architect with her alliance of who to vote out and when and why. So she could win on the social aspect. She could win on the gameplay aspect. If she gets to the end, she's going to win. And I think that people are starting to realize that, which I think undermines her chances of getting to the end. If you take her to the end, that she's going to win. Ozzy would have taken her to the end. I promise you, would have taken her to the end no matter what. I don't think there's anybody else left on that island who's going to willingly take her to the final tribal council. You're just giving away $1 million. So as much as I'd like for Suri to win, I don't necessarily think that she's going to. if Rick Devens is able to outsmart his way to the final three, he's got a real strong case for why he should win, because he's been making moves and revealing information and stuff like that when you should reveal information. So I think that he's got a strong case. I think that we're heading toward like a Jonathan Joe Aubrey final tribal council, which wouldn't be my favorite. It would just be because everybody else peaked at the wrong time. Of those in that final tribal council, my pick would probably be Jonathan or Aubrey. I think that the power might be shifting a little bit more that way right now. So I'm just going to go nutty here and say, and this could be very wrong, he'll probably get voted out tonight, but I'm going to say my pick would be, I think Aubrey has too many enemies, even though she might deserve it if she gets to the final three. So I'd say, let me say Jonathan, with the hope that it might not be, because he hasn't necessarily played my favorite game so far this season. But I think of the people left, he's the most likely to get to the final tribal council because he's also great at challenges. And I think that he could probably convince people to vote for him. But he's not necessarily who I'm rooting for. Fan Addict says, "Hi, Dan. Can you say hello to my wife, Marion? We love your reviews." Hello, Marion. Thank you for watching. And your partner, Fan Addicts, is very nice for asking me to say hello. Thank you, Marion. And thank you, Fanatics, for watching. Cartoon 49 says, "Who is an actor that is not as popular now or is not in major films you wish would make a big comeback, like Robert Downey Jr. and Brendan Fraser, on top of your head?" I like that we kind of seem to be going through a Matthew Lillard renaissance, because I just saw that James Gunn cast him in I think the Superman sequel. I could be wrong. I've always liked Matthew Lillard, so I'm glad that Matthew Lillard is coming back. Somebody like a Brendan Fraser, Robert Downey Jr. Oh man, it's hard. I'm sure that the perfect answer is going to hit me over the head 10 minutes after the show's done. That's tough. Let me see. Maybe somebody will throw in. Let's see. Drew Skizzy, thank you for the epic rant. Thank you very much. While I'm thinking, I'm just looking here at the some of the comments. Have you considered hiring editors to take the pressure off of you? Not really, because I want to make sure I can pay them what they're worth. Sorry, I'm just buying time while I think about that. It's hard for me to just think off the top of my head. I'm just kind of trying to go through because a lot of them, like Michael Keaton, have already done that, have already come back, since the 90s, 80s and 90s. So yeah, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But I am glad to see people like Robert Downey Jr. and Brendan Fraser that have made that comeback. And people like Matthew Lillard, I think, that are making that comeback. That's been very gratifying for me to see. Hello, Mr. Jamwa says, "If you were given the chance to curate a new streaming service, what kind of things would you put on there?" I mean, for me, it's all about making really exciting original content. I would try to source original stuff from exciting creators. I think that's where I saw that Netflix had their upfronts, I think, today, and I looked at what they announced, and it was just kind of like more of what they're already doing, and none of that really excited me. So I think that you can build a streaming service off of a really good original show. So I would first search for new, exciting people who have good ideas. Nobody really heard of the Duffer Brothers before Stranger Things. Squid Game came out of nowhere. Try to find those ideas that you think could really, kind of grab people's attention. And ideas that are just singular. I don't think anybody pegged Stranger Things or Squid Game to be the faces of Netflix, and yet they became that because people liked what they did. So I would anchor it with what I thought was some really interesting original content, which Apple TV seems to have done. And then I would surround that with, again, quality. For me, this whole quantity over quality thing has never been a great selling point for a streaming service. So if there are rights to things out there that I find interesting that people like, but that aren't necessarily, I'm not trying to go for Seinfeld or The Big Bang Theory. Like, go for stuff that's maybe lower, a smaller net, but the people who want to see those things are really going to want to see those things. And go out and secure the rights to things that are hard to find, obscure 80s TV shows, or beloved shows that maybe haven't really found a home in a streaming service. So really, it maybe seem like kind of a niche strategy, but it would be one where I'm trying to get people excited. about it. Love Lives. Thank you for your honest, nuanced opinions. It's from HP versus 1000. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy it. Dylan Fitzsimons 2278 says thoughts on Ted Lasso. I like the show. I know that Spencer Gilbert says it's a show written by psychopaths, but I like the show a lot. I wasn't crazy about, I guess now it's not the final season, but I wasn't crazy about the last season. I felt like the storytelling wasn't as strong. I didn't hate it or anything like that, but I think it started off stronger than where it has gone. But I like shows about nice people that nice things happen to. I know that some people find that unrealistic, but I like it. So I enjoyed it. I think that Jason Sudeikis is great in that role. Jonathan Hood says, the GOAT of YouTube movies, wondering about your relationship with Chaplin movies. The array of films and subjects is remarkable, and his catalog, Limelight, is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I've seen, I'd say most of the major ones. Limelight I actually haven't seen. I need to see. I love that, I don't think he gets enough credit for the technical efficiency of his films. I think he's a brilliant comedian, timing wise, physical comedy wise, but also as a director, just the fact that he was able to execute a lot of these physical set pieces to a degree that I think maybe is overshadowed by Buster Keaton by historians, but I think that Charlie Chaplin was just as great. And he has such heart. He's got such a depth of feeling in his movies. I love how emotional Charlie Chaplin's films are. Even the character of the tramp is one that you feel very deeply for, and he feels very deeply on screen. That character is very romantic or sad or whatever it is. So, brilliant comedian. I think maybe not mentioned as much as he should be as a director. And then going into the era of the talkies, like with The Great Dictator, I mean, that view on the world at a time when he was kind of ahead of a lot of people with that on The Great Dictator, and the fact that he was not afraid to take that stand. And yeah, I think that he's obviously very important in the records of film history, but I also think that he's in some ways underrated. I love everything I've seen from Charlie Chaplin. Wesley Petrelli says, thoughts on Thelma and Louise? Just watched for the first time. It's both dated and modern, but I thought Harvey Keitel was underused. Not Ridley Scott's best. Yeah, it's been a minute since I saw Thelma and Louise. It is funny that movie came out in the 90s, but I think that it would make some people very big mad on the internet if it came out now, judged by some of the modern internet sensibilities. But as I recall, I thought it was a good movie. It really has never stood out to me as one of my favorite Ridley Scott films, but I probably haven't seen it in 20, 25 years. But I like the fact that it was rare at that time to make a big budget film with two women in the lead. It wasn't unheard of. Obviously, some other directors had done it. But I think that sisterhood between Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon is really what made the movie popular. More so than any of the action and stuff. And listen, it takes guts to end a movie like that. It absolutely does. Drew Skizzy says, Michael was back at number one on Monday. Any chance it retakes number one this weekend? I think there's a great chance that Michael retakes number one this weekend. Mortal Kombat didn't have a great opening, and I would be shocked if it had a great hold in its second weekend. As you mentioned, day to day, Michael is now challenging The Devil Wears Prada 2, which is also holding up really well. Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, I think will probably have some draw, but they both open on Wednesday, so I don't know if either one of them is really a threat to take number one. Obsession, maybe, though, especially if the buzz is really strong on that movie. Maybe Obsession could come in and take it. But I think that Michael has a really good shot to take number one this weekend, and I've actually already pre-prepped some stats for the last movie to retake number one, the last live action movie to retake number one, the last live action movie to take number one after multiple weeks. So I'm pre-prepping charts, but I think it's got a great shot. Clay 7729 says, hey Dan, sorry, big question, but in your opinion, what's the best acting you've ever seen in a movie? Thanks. That's tough. Thank you, by the way, for that super chat. That's tough because acting, there's so many different kinds of characters and so many different kinds of performances. Here's what I'll say. The performance that I remember being absolutely transfixed by the first time I watched the film, and then my jaw dropped at certain parts in the movie, is Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards. because he's so that it starts with that turn he makes in the first that very famous opening scene, the very kind of pleasant person, and then when he shifts into that questioning, that turn in his character is insane. But I think that scene is a great scene, and it gets a lot of the people talking about it. But for me, an even better version of that is the scene between him and Melanie Laurent in the restaurant, where you don't know if he knows who she is. And then there's a point at which he says, "There was one more thing I was going to ask you." And then his face just drops, and he's got this like death stare. And then he goes, "But I couldn't remember what it was." Because then you're like, wait a minute, does he know or does he not know? And it's such like a blood chilling scene. And then I remember when they go to the theater and he starts speaking in fluent Italian, I was like, oh, come on. Like, what can this guy not do? So I will say that Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards for me was the performance I most remember going like, this guy can do anything. He can play any note. He speaks all of these different languages. He's perfect for the character. And it's still one of my favorite movie performances of all time. Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood would be another one for me that I would say is an all-time, as far as just the best acting I've ever seen, and commitment to character and making me believe that you are that character and playing those little notes and every moment in that note. And then Cate Blanchett in Tar, I think is an incredible performance, top to bottom, of a very complicated character. Those are the first ones that come to mind. Jamie Evans 8985 says, "You said that All My Movies takes a lot of time to produce. I've watched them all multiple times, so I was wondering, what would it take to produce more? Patreon stretch goal?" I get a lot of questions about All My Movies, and honestly, it's more about me, and it's like a quality of life question, because that show, if it's done how I want to do it, takes literally, it would be multiple quote unquote work days out of my week. It would probably be a minimum of 16 hours per episode of production time. And I'm talking about, and maybe more, because it's watching the movie and then also doing research on the movie, watching any special features, a lot of commentaries on the Blu-ray, finding YouTube videos, reviews, contemporary reviews about it, news stories, research around the production of it, if that stuff's not available, then writing everything, writing the whole episode, recording it, editing it, which puts in, it's probably more than 16 hours per episode. And it would have to be, any compensation for that would have to be something that would allow me to do that basically as almost my primary job, or at least my co-lead job with running this channel. And I've just never, that would be a rather significant amount of money. And I just don't think, as much as people love the show, I just don't think that it could ever generate that much. My hope was that it would. My hope was that eventually the show would get big enough that it would, I could justify that. And that's why I put so much time into it. It's like, okay, let's work on this show for a year or so, or however long I did it. I'm going to put so much time into it, because if it creates a following big enough, then this could just be sort of like 1B. 1A is the channel, 1B is the podcast, as far as what I do. But it just never found that following. So it would have to be something that allows me to take so much time away from this channel, and everything else that I do, that is essentially makes as much as what else I would do here. And I just have never been able to get it to that big. So I just don't know if there would be an amount that would justify me doing it at the level that I want to do it. It would be nice. That was my goal. That's what I wanted for the show, but I could just never get it there. Rochester Producers 8847 says, any chance you can bring back your spotlight of indie theaters on charts? It's great to see where thriving film communities gather in different cities. Yeah, I mean, it was getting harder and harder for me to find not just theaters that I wanted to talk about, but also theaters that there was enough information to kind of give a different background on. I think the lowest viewed video I ever did on the channel, still, maybe it's been replaced by one or two, was when I strung them all together. And literally the thumbnail says support indie cinema, and the fewest amount of people watched it of any other video that I've done, which I knew that was never going to be one of my most viewed videos, but I wish more people would enjoy it. But it was also a workload thing. Charts has expanded more as the box office has kind of expanded more, and things have opened up more, and the strikes effects have kind of subsided. And I do want to keep an eye on charts and not make that show overloaded. I don't want to make it too long, have too much stuff. And it really just kind of became, and that's sort of where some of the other things I used to do on charts, like the 365-day chart and the box office flashback, they've kind of gone away as more real numbers have come in, as more movies have come out, because I love having a lot in that show. But at the same time, I also don't want to overload it and kind of make it inaccessible for people like, well, I just want to know what happened with the box office. Sarstapan says, would you get high with Bruce from Jaws or the demon from Hereditary? Hashtag sorry. Ooh, Payman or Bruce from Jaws? Well, the actual logistics of getting high with a shark come to mind because number one, there's the water factor of how do you smoke with a shark that's in water. Number two, how do you have a delivery system potent enough to actually guarantee that both of you are going to get high? I mean, because the shark from Jaws is 25 footer, 3 tons of them. So how are you going to deliver enough to that shark to ensure that you're both at the level that you want to be? I guess I'd have to go with Payman. I mean, it seems like Payman's wrath is restricted to people from a certain bloodline, and I don't think I'm in that bloodline. And I mean, listen, I don't think the outcome is going to be great either way, but just to avoid the logistical issues alone, I guess I'd go with Payman from Hereditary. It's kind of a nightmare blunt rotation, if I'm being honest. Rodri R says, hey, Dan, technical question I've always had. Why is box office measured in weekends instead of first 7 days? This would negate Wednesday, Thursday asterisks. It's just because most movies open on Friday. And so those first 3 days are often, it's just how records are kept. It's indicative of the initial surge of interest in a movie. It's kind of a point of pride about what you did your opening weekend. It's one of the reasons that I do continue to track films past their opening weekend, and I do the 2026 annual charts. And I will often do, if you watch charts, I'll track movies through. I just did it with Oppenheimer and Project Hail Mary. I just did it with Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Galaxy, and Minecraft. I do track movies over an extended course of their run because I think that there is more than just the opening weekend. But that's just kind of the standard because that's usually when you see how initially popular a movie can be or initially unpopular a movie can be. I do try to compensate for that on charts though by continuing to track movies across multiple weeks. Sometimes we get 2 months into release and I'm still tracking the gross. Z Strike 026 says you're suddenly thrown into a Mortal Kombat tournament. Who are you fighting and what's your finishing move? Well, I have to say my Mortal Kombat knowledge pretty much stops at the movies themselves, but it feels like, listen, I wouldn't have a shot against anybody. So maybe my finishing move would be like trying to bore them to death, like like a numbers finisher, where I just start going on about like international box office results for American movies in China released after the blackout period ends in the middle of the summer, something like that, where like they get so distracted and bored, I can maybe like shiv them or something. I mean, Johnny Cage, I feel like seems like the most likely, although he's in the industry though, so he'd probably be interested in that. Maybe I could. No. I'm trying to think who would be least interested in box office figures, but also most likely for me to be able to shiv unexpectedly. I don't know. Maybe Sub-Zero or somebody I could catch him off guard with a bunch of box office numbers and then slip one in. But I doubt it. I doubt I'd be able to take anybody. But it would be like a boredom. I don't know. That's a bad rallying cry. Toon Hut says, does watching movies as a profession take away from the joy of it? Example, watching a movie as soon as possible instead of at your leisure, hours on creating videos, etc. No, I wouldn't say it takes away from the joy of film. There are some times where I wish, especially with a big movie, that sometimes I wish I could just like or not like a film away from the discourse around it, because I know that if I like or don't like a movie, then I'm also dealing with moderating comments and stuff and people that disagree and trying to clarify what I thought. And sometimes I'm like, well, I wish I could just go see a movie and just think what I think about it. But if that's what I want, I should be doing a different job. It doesn't take away from the joy of movies. I loved movies before this job, and that's why I'm still doing it, is because I love films. There are some times where, the Oscars, for example, there are times where it's like, oh man, I remember when I could just watch the Oscars and it wasn't followed by an all-nighter of doing a video. But at the same time, I love doing those videos, even though it can be inconvenient. So yeah, I would say sometimes I do kind of fondly think about the times where it wasn't all tied into doing a review or doing a news story, but at the same time, I enjoy doing the work. So it's kind of fleeting. It's not a constant thing of like, I just wish I could go back to before I started this channel. I never get to that point. Yeah. Letici Musdomsi says favorite whodunit movies. Clue is definitely one of them. Knives Out more recently. The first one and the third one, Wake Up Dead Man. The second one I like, but I like the first and third Knives Out a lot. Those are the first ones that jump to mind. I'm sure there's a lot more. Like it's hard for me to pull favorites off the top of my head, but those are the first ones that come to mind. Rochester Producers 8847 says, Dan, as a fellow Trekkie, you and I know some of the dismissiveness when a TV property goes to theaters. I feel I'm seeing Star Wars fans go through it for the first time with Mando and Grogu. Thoughts? I think it depends on the scale and the size of it. So with Star Trek, Star Trek the motion picture was done very much in the vein of Star Wars, where it's like, we're going to give you a spectacle and everything else. I'm sure that there were some people who were like, oh, that cheesy show, but it felt like the fans were excited about it. The fans of the show were excited about it. I think what we're seeing with Mandalorian and Grogu is there are some people that are fans of the show already that still look at the trailer and go, well, wait, why is this in a theater? Why do I have to pay to go see this? And I think that's what the movie has to overcome. And it may very well overcome that. But I think that there definitely is. There were some people, especially in the 90s, when a lot of TV to movie adaptations weren't great, where it was sort of viewed as a cheap move or kind of a creatively bankrupt thing. But I think the major thing is if you can prove why you have made the jump to movies and why it was necessary and sort of upscale that whole thing or tell a great story, then a lot of those hesitations or a lot of those questions will go away. But right now, I think it's because people are, streaming is getting more expensive and people are saying, wait, so there's a show that I can watch for free at home that now you're asking me to pay more to see on the screen. Why? And so I think you do have to prove your existence a little bit more. But I think the shows that have made that jump the most successfully have been able to say, here, this is why. We're giving you a premium experience. We're able to do things that we couldn't do. Star Trek was one of them that did it very successfully. So I think it's very results oriented. And I think it's also because entertainment is so expensive now that when you're asked to pay more for what you're already getting for free or for a subscription that you're already paying, there's sort of a burden of proof attached to that. Brendan Barrow 1071 says, love your channel. Genuinely the best movie reviewer out there. Thank you very much. Have you been to the Crystal Bridges Museum in Arkansas? I went last year and it was amazing. It's one of those things they say, like there's things in LA. I lived there for 15 years that I never went to see. I hear it's great. I have not been, but I need to go. Limberlad says, who do you consider to be your biggest rival in the world of movie fights? In my opinion, you were/are always the top debater. Thank you very much. My biggest rival, there were many over the years. Spencer is the one who knows how to push my buttons the best. And that's because we sat in an office together for 8 hours a day for years. So he knows, as you can see in many of the past movie fights, he knows how to twist my argument to make it sound ridiculous, which he knows will make me angry, which could throw me off my game. So Spencer's the one that really knows how to take something I say, kind of turn it, which is fair play, that's the game, in a way that will then get me defensive and then maybe throw me off my game. So he definitely was the one that can provoke me the most. As far as like who I was always kind of worried about facing, Ed Greer was always a tough opponent. I mean, there were times where I was like, he's got me. And his movie fighting skills against me are far better than what some of the records, et cetera, may indicate. Greg Alba is the same. He was always really well prepared, ready to go. Coy, especially in the speed round, was always somebody that was very, very difficult to counter. But I would say, the greatest rival, I would say Spencer, just because he knows me so well. and he can play me like a piano. Um, I think that would be my top rival. Shoja RB3PG says, "Will you review Backrooms and do you know the lore?" Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely review Backrooms. I don't know the lore because I'm old and out of touch, but I'm glad that it's getting a lot of people excited about it. People in the younger generations than me. But yeah, Backrooms is one I'm definitely gonna review when it comes out. Ferris EB says, "Did you start getting Criterion sales emails again? They dropped a spring sale yesterday." No, I don't know what happened. You literally, all of you are the ones that are telling me when stuff is happening on Criterion. I've looked, I've checked the Criterion website. I don't see anywhere where I said don't email me again. I've checked my spam folder. There aren't any Criterion emails in there. For whatever reason, I am off Criterion's mailing list, and it drives me nuts because I want to know when there's sales. I want to know when the flash sale is happening. I don't know what I did. I must have clicked something at some point, but I've stopped getting Criterion emails. Now I got to go check the Criterion spring sale. Boomer Bus says, "Here's how I rank the impact of my grade of a movie. Story, acting, dialogue, production, cinematography, effects, editing, and score is last. What is yours?" I don't really have a hard rating on what I look for. Like I don't necessarily prioritize them. I will say I think you can have all of your bottom, however many, perfectly in line. If you have a bad story, it's not going to work. So story is toward the top of my list because I think that is probably the most crucial element, either at the script phase or in the editing phase or both, to having a good movie. But I think the rest of it I can kind of overlook depending on what the other elements are like. Yeah, I don't have a set hierarchy, but I will say that story for me, I think, is the most crucial element for a movie to be good. That's not necessarily what I rank a movie based on. But usually if the story's not good, then it's not a very good movie overall. Yoshi Boy 234 says, "Did you finish Arcane season 2? Thoughts?" I did finish Arcane season 2. That was another show where I was super ramped up to review it, and then I got to the end of it and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I liked it." I don't know. It didn't hit me like the first season did. So I didn't do it, but I did finish Arcane season 2. It looked great, but it just didn't have the same for me as the first season. Jason Nelson 5251 says, "With more movies made for fans, are critics relevant?" Okay, well, this is a nice topic of discussion because it's one of my least favorite. The idea of like, well, critics, it doesn't matter. This movie's made for fans. Fans are just an audience, and I've never really understood what the meaning of that is. Oh, critics won't understand it. It's just made for the fans. Yeah, but why does that preclude it from being? Because it's always a movie that a critic doesn't like, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter. The movie's made for fans, but that even if it's made quote unquote for fans, why should that mean that the story shouldn't be good, or why should that mean that there's certain elements that are subpar? If you're making it for fans, shouldn't that mean that you're putting extra care into those things? I don't buy into this whole thing of fans versus critics. I really don't. I really don't, because people paint critics as if they are out of touch or that they somehow are contemptuous of fans. And I think what everybody's out for is just a good movie. Now, if you go see Five Nights at Freddy's or Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and you get the movie on a different level than I do as a critic because you're a fan of the movie, that's fine. But I don't think that discounts what a critic thinks as far as the acting and the way the story's written, and is it understandable for fans? Because I think to say that you should discount what a critic thinks because it's made for the fans means that the only relevant opinion about that movie is the opinion of somebody who's already a fan of it. That's certainly an important opinion of it, but I don't think that it should be, oh, this is the only opinion that matters. I still think that even if you're making a movie, quote unquote, for the fans, you should still make a good movie, not for people that are fans of the franchise. And for me, it's based on the franchise itself, because if you're making a movie for the fans, but you're also making a great movie that speaks to people who aren't fans, guess what you've made? You've made a fan out of that person who maybe wasn't already familiar with what you were doing. Instead of alienating that person and saying, I don't get it. I don't get what that was about. That's what happened to me with Harry Potter. That's what happened to me to an extent with Lord of the Rings. I read the books before Fellowship of the Ring came out, but the movie sort of made me even deeper fall in love with the books. Harry Potter, I knew nothing about. The first movie made me a fan, not just of the movies, but also the books. If, let's say, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone had come out, and it's super engaging for the fans, but people that didn't know anything about Harry Potter didn't understand it, you would have lost out on making millions of fans of Harry Potter. So yeah, the fans versus critics thing, I just don't understand. And I think that fans of something should want even more for a movie to be good and enjoyable for more than just them, because they're going to get more people who are also fans of what they love. I just think that that's a way to discount critical opinion when a movie maybe has elements that aren't that great to most critics, to make us seem irrelevant, when really, you, as a fan of something, maybe even though you enjoyed it, you could maybe ask for better from, that was the discussion with Michael Jackson, the Michael Jackson movie. Well, it doesn't matter what critics think. This is for fans of Michael. Yeah, but if it's only for fans of Michael, you're not making any more new fans by making a movie that I think shows in a much better way his legacy and his life beyond just playing the music that people already enjoy. It's just not a discussion that I'm a particular fan of. Trav Touchdown says, can you really compare Star Wars to Star Trek? They are extremely different franchises despite both of them being in space. No, I've never really thought they're directly comparable. Star Trek is much more comparable to franchises like Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that. Most people would even say Star Wars isn't even sci-fi, it's fantasy. So they're not even really in the same genre. They get lumped together because they're both in space and because they're both nerdy. But no, there's not a whole lot of comparison between the two. Emir Hades 3211 says, do you think YA dystopian films are coming back? Well, it seems like the Hunger Games is definitely coming back with Sunrise on the Reaping, but no, I don't see a full-scale resurrection of the dystopian YA genre. I think that's been mined a little too much, but it does seem like some of those franchises have got more appeal now. Clay 7729 says, what's the last movie that you happy cried watching? I'm not a huge crier at movies generally. I am more so now as I've gotten older, but I don't happy cry that much. I can't really say that I've happy cried at a movie that I can think of. There's certainly movies that I find satisfying, but yeah, I can't think of one actually that made me happy cry. Most of it's just like sad cry or like meaningful cry, but not necessarily happy cry. Ferris EB says, I love coming of age stories. What do you think separates a great one from a forgettable one? I think a great coming of age story has to feel personal in some way, like the person who wrote it, like these events have great meaning to them, which means writing characters where these events have great meaning to them. I think a forgettable coming of age story is one that just hits all the tropes and all the cliches, and it's a story that you've seen before. The dialogue between characters is all dialogue you've heard before. I think that a coming of age story with a great set of characters who have conversations with each other that feel so personal and meaningful and rooted in those characters is so good. I mean, I think one of the things that makes Stand By Me so amazing is that line at the end. This is I've never had friends like I did when I was 12 years old. And the last line is, Jesus, does anyone? Because that's such a true thing. There's a quality and a level of friendship that you have as a child that is very difficult to achieve when you're older. And that feels so rooted in reality. And I think one of the reasons that The Sandlot has endured is that the relationships between those characters are all very interpersonal. It's not just trope after trope after trope. So I think it just has to feel personal. It has to feel like it's coming from a personal space, and people can relate to that. Johnny Oddity says, looks like we have more than loving movies in common. I also found a snake in my house. Oh, thankfully he was a small one. I picked him up and let him out. Well, good for you. Good. Oh, good for you, Johnny Oddity. I wish the one in my house had just been a small one. Although, to be honest, I still wouldn't have picked him up and let him out. But I'm glad that we're in the snake club. Phantasm X says, hey, Dan, always loved you and Schnepp since the Schmodown days. R.I.P. John Schnepp. Curious your thoughts on the Ryan Coogler X-Files reboot. As a fan, I was uninterested, but with the cast reveal, I am now interested. Thanks. I mean, I love Ryan Coogler. I know that, I was also excited with the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone thing, and that didn't really go anywhere, but I love that Ryan Coogler is now in a position, and there are other creators that are now in a position to go back and work on franchises that they loved growing up. And I think X-Files is an interesting one because the whole conspiracy thing is as big as it's ever been. I mean, the UAP files and everything with the government, and not to mention every other thing. I mean, COVID obviously was a huge resurgence of conspiracy stuff, and I think that it's the X-Files as a concept is as relevant now, maybe more relevant than it was in the 90s, because it's kind of come out from the shadows and sort of the lone gunman in the basement type thing to its mainstream now. So I think that there are so many opportunities to do something with an X-Files reboot, and I'm excited to see what Ryan Coogler has in store. Wesley Petrelli says, without talking figures, what does your channel revenue pie graphic percentage look like between AdSense, sponsors, super chats, etc.? Looking for a benchmark. I don't really, I generally kind of look at it as an overall number. I don't really break down, and maybe I should, but I don't really break down as like, 60% comes from that and 70% comes from that. I would say that the majority of what I make comes from Google AdSense. Sponsorships that are sold, like the ones that I do, are a substantial secondary revenue stream for me. Patreon is a chunk. And then super chats, that's just a weekly thing. I have a range of what I get. It might be, I don't know, 10% or so of what I make on the channel every year, but I've never actually done and looked at the percentages. It's more of just, I look at overall health more than X percent. I'm not huge in the analytics as far as that goes. But I would say that Google AdSense is the majority of my income. Drew Skizzy says the new Big Bang Theory spinoff looks ridiculous. I haven't even seen what that is. I've only seen a few episodes of the Big Bang Theory. It just wasn't that broad sitcom humor is hard. It's a hard sell for me now. So I don't even know what the new Big Bang spinoff looks like. I'm sure it probably is though. Peacock Sucker Punch says, hi Dan, thoughts on the Comeback season 3 and Euphoria season 3? I haven't seen either one. Not only have I not seen the new seasons of those shows, I've never actually seen any of those shows. So I have no thoughts. I've seen some mixed feelings on Euphoria season 3, which doesn't shock me, but no real thoughts. Ryan Schuler says, hey Dan, what's your top 50? Just kidding. Have you ever seen Terry Gilliam's Brazil? Love that movie. Brazil joins The Sound of Music and a few others on my list of things that is shamefully unacceptable that I haven't seen yet. So I don't have thoughts on Brazil, but I do need to see it. Keen Bone says, did you go see Deep Water? Thoughts? If so, I didn't go see Deep Water. My weekends have been a little busy lately. So I did not go see Deep Water, even though it's a shark movie. I hear, though, the reaction was good. So I'll probably try to check it out at some point. Firo Hero says, hi, Dan. 2 questions. What is the popular movie you've never seen? Probably The Sound of Music would be the answer to that. And are you going to review Obsession? I may well review Obsession, especially since it's a slower week. The response has been pretty strong so far, so I might check it out. I've heard good things. Wesley Petrelli says, speaking of Chaplin, what are your thoughts on Una Chaplin's performance in Avatar, Fire and Ash? For me, Varang was one of the best villains in recent years. Yeah, it was interesting to me to see what the reaction was to her, because I didn't think that she was done any favors by the script. On the page, she didn't really jump off out of the movie for me, no pun intended. But I thought that Una Chaplin was great, and I think that what she brought to that character is what made her so kind of viral, and why the TikToks around Varang and everything were like so. I was disappointed that the movie didn't do more for her, but I think that she gave that character such a presence. It allowed her to become this sort of social media icon for however long. So I was very happy with her performance, but I wish that they had done more for her on the page. They, meaning James Cameron, I guess. Hi, Dan. Always happy to catch you live. Recently, I've been seeing things for the first time. Dune, 1984, Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, without knowing what it was about. Sinners, and Wonder Man, all really cool. Yeah, I need to see still Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, and Wonder Man, because I've heard great things about both of them. Ferris EB says, you probably already know this, but I learned last weekend that the French title for Jaws, I know this, I believe it's La Dent de Mer, the teeth of the sea. Do you have a favorite funny title translation that you like? Um, no, well, no, yes, I do. Um, we did this on Honest Trailers, which is I Frankenstein, the Aaron Eckhart movie, I think. In Spanish, which is again, this is literal, is titled Yo Frankenstein, because yo in Spanish is I. So Spencer, Joe, and I used to often when that movie would come up, we'd go like, Yo Frankenstein. So yeah, Yo Frankenstein is probably the translation that I've gotten the most laughs out of. But yeah, La Dent de la Mer, the teeth of the sea. That's a great translation for Jaws. Damian Fenton 3880 says, speaking of Christoph Waltz, I think Bond really dropped the ball by wasting his talents. Absolutely, they did. The whole Blofeld thing was such a. Uh, they really got so bogged down in that and trying to do that arc across all the movies, but it was obviously not very well planned out. And I agree, because it was such great casting for that role, and they just did they fumbled it. I agree. I'm with you there. Zach Likes Movie 72 says the buzz around Sheep Detectives has me about to walk into a film I had absolutely zero interest in a month ago. Y'all best not be lying to me now. Yeah, so many people are saying how much they like Sheep Detectives. Go see Sheep Detectives, review Sheep Detectives. So yeah, it's been a lot of a really positive buzz around that movie. Black Bag V says, sorry for the personal question, but do you and Amy Nicholson ever grab that beer? As viewers, we definitely shipped you two for a minute a decade ago. Yeah, I mean, that's a person I was in a relationship with for a few months a decade ago. We live in different cities now. So no, because I moved here in 2020 and I was with somebody prior to that. So we did not, but I have immense respect. She was and is an insanely talented film critic, and one of the most knowledgeable people about film and movies and everything else that I've ever met. So no, but nothing but respect for her. But no, that's been over a decade ago. So no, it's a bit of a personal question. I flushed a little bit because it's like it's weird to have to answer that on live on the internet. But hey, listen, it's a viewer question episode. Brian Whitlock 3888 says, "What do you think of Kirk's pop culture persona versus how he regularly acts in original series? He regularly consults his officers and isn't nearly the womanizer people think if you keep track. He's less of a cowboy and more measured." Well, yeah, I mean, I think everyone gets caricatured to a certain extent. He is. I mean, he's kind of a womanizer. I mean, it's not just that he's seducing the green girl, but like he's often flirting and flirty. Riker, although I would say, is as much a womanizer as Captain Kirk. And I think that Shatner's style leads to people caricaturing his character, making his character a caricature, because he's so big and just easy. He's like Christopher Walken. He's so easy to make a kind of an oversized portrait of, that Captain Kirk has gotten swept up in that. Um, I do agree. Like, I think he's more reckless than a lot of the other captains that we've seen in Star Trek, but I think people might see sort of like with George Herbert Walker Bush, that people think more of the Dana Carvey impression than they think of the actual man. And I think that the sort of outsized depictions of Captain Kirk maybe people think of more than who he actually is. I like Captain Kirk as a character, especially what they did with him in the features and embracing him getting older. Black Bag V says, just want to know that if Friends, Whose Fault Is It episode 4 doesn't come out soon, we will march on Arkansas. Give it to us, Daniel, my love. Listen, I love doing the show, but it's all about schedules and stuff. I was thinking yesterday though, I need to get with Joe and Spencer and get that on track. So we'll have it hopefully not too long from now. Because yes, I very much want to do another one of those. They're so much fun. Grace Kelly 2733 says, "Thank you, Dan. Been here from Screen Junkies days. I'm not a big movie buff, but I love the charts, and your reviews make me see new things I wouldn't." Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy it, and thanks for sticking around since Screen Junkies. And I do try to, at least put the word out on stuff that I think people will enjoy. Jason Webster 9300 says, "Hi, Dan. Is there a book or graphic novel you believe now is the right time for its first film adaptation?" First film adaptation is tough because I mean, there's things that like Devil in the White City that have been in the works for years, and there's a lot of movies like like Watchmen, or a lot of books like Watchmen and The Shining that have had perfectly all right adaptations that I think could be better. But it's hard for me, I don't read nearly enough for me to be like, oh, this is a great gem of a story that's never been made. So nothing super jumps into my mind like right off the bat. But I think there's a lot of adaptations that have been done where I'd love to see another attempt at, like World War Z. I'd love to see a series built around World War Z, as I've said many times before. Brian Whitlock 3888 says, Patreon shout out. Thanks for the AMA. Yes, Brian. I did my AMA over on Patreon also this week. I'm long delayed, unfortunately, but I also do those over there monthly, where I do actually have time to research things like ranking questions and stuff like that, because I gather all the questions, I do my research, and then I tape them. So if you want things ranked and stuff, I do AMAs on Patreon where I am actually able to give it that time to give a great answer, or hopefully a great answer. Grace Kelly 2733 says, sorry if it's been asked, but are you excited for The Mandalorian? I love Star Wars, but there's just something missing in the trailers. I can't explain it. I'm not excited for The Mandalorian. I think that it's got a lot of potential, but I don't anticipate it in the way that I have other Star Wars movies, if I'm being honest. But I'm hopeful. I hope it's as great as, that first season and captures what made the show great. Sahib Singh 9897 says, regular comment, but I can't wait until the Doomsday episode of Charts. We'll mark it in your calendars for December. That's going to be a really interesting episode. I can't wait for the Doomsday episode of Charts either, because it's rare that you see something like that at the box office. Ryan Schuler says, do you think Disney can change the perception of modern Star Wars? My friends won't give Andor a try since the sequel trilogy, quote, killed Star Wars. I mean, Disney can change the perception of modern Star Wars by making great stuff. Andor's not enough to do it alone. Andor can't be the only thing that's your calling card in the last 5 years. I mean, The Mandalorian, but it's been now 7 years since The Mandalorian debuted on Disney Plus. So I think that the fact that season 3 wasn't as well received, Disney can reinvent modern Star Wars by making great modern Star Wars. The problem is that a lot of what's come out has either been not great or has been all right. It's been fine. Oh yeah, people liked Ahsoka. Yeah, sure. Star Wars is battling against headwinds. There are a lot of people that are just anti-Star Wars. Anything Star Wars that gets made, there's going to be a raft of channels on the internet that are going to make a video trashing every element of it for whatever reason, and sometimes for very specific reasons. But the way that you reinvent it is to make great movies, make great shows. And they haven't consistently been doing that. That to me is the way to do it. Andor was great. If you'd followed up Andor with another show or another movie that was as great as Andor, or even 75% as great as Andor, well, then you've got momentum. Oh, did you see Andor? No. Well, they put out this new thing too. It's great as well. It's the work. It's you put out the work. If you make enough great stuff, eventually people are going to come back to it, because enough people will say, dude, Star Wars is back. The last 3 shows or the last movie and the last show are great, but you have to have that consistency. Same with Marvel. David B. DeBomb says, just wanted to thank you for the discussion on Lupita's casting discourse last week. It's why I subbed to you after seeing your Little Mermaid review in 2023. Breath of fresh air in a sea of bigotry. Thank you. That was, I knew that there were going to be some people that, well, I think that a lot of people kind of took from that I was saying that if you didn't like her casting, that you were racist. And that's not what I was saying. I was saying that I think there are a lot of people that don't like it. And I think that there are some people who maybe should examine why they don't like it. But I'm not automatically saying, like, if you just don't like Lupita Nyong'o's acting, okay, that's fine. But I'm not trying to make a blanket statement, but there is some of this dislike against her that's racially motivated. I'm not saying all of it. And I always try to couch it by saying, I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying all of it, but there's an element of backlash against that casting that is purely racially motivated. That's, you can deny it, but that's just the truth. There is an element that is driven by that. And that's what I have a problem with. And that I try to talk about. And the same with Halle Bailey and The Little Mermaid. There was an element of the backlash against her casting that was motivated by race. Not saying everybody. Summer Curl says, I saw The Devil. Categorizing the genre bending of Korean cinema is difficult, but would you ever do a tier list video on niche cinema? Yeah, it would have to be that it would have to be a specific niche. I mean, I feel like I've kind of dipped my toes into that with like the A24 horror, etc. But yeah, absolutely. If it was a niche, especially that I was really interested in, definitely. Lucas White 3284. Lucas, I'm so sorry. Thank you for the super chat. I didn't get your question, but thank you for that. Jason Webster 9300 says, should Warner Brothers, DC, and Disney Marvel films inject standalone films from lesser characters or acquired comic book IPs, or is it time for a hiatus? Well, I think that we're seeing that. We're seeing Clayface with Warner Brothers and DC, which I like the look of that. I like the trailer for it. So I think we're seeing some of that. Marvel did that a little bit with some of the, Guardians and Ant-Man, and that worked out pretty well for them. Again, I think it just comes down to quality. If you're making a bunch of great stuff, then people, I think, are going to seek it out, but it's the inconsistency that's killing it. It's not character choice. It's not any of this other stuff. It's just the inconsistency. You've got to put more care into the projects that you're producing, no matter who the characters are. Grace Kelly 2733 says, Marriage Story makes me happy cry. It's a weird mishmash of feelings. For me, it's a classic and I love it. But have you seen it? If so, what do you think? I really liked Marriage Story. I think it was in my top 10 the year that it came out. I was not really, I feel like that scene that gets passed around of Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson arguing that a lot of people mocked at the time. I think it's easy to take a scene out of context in a movie and just say like, oh, look how stupid this is. When you see that in the context of the movie and the fact that that was the eruption point of an entire movie's worth of conflict, I liked it. I mean, it got a little too writery in the sense of like, there were times when I was, it seemed like I could feel Noah Baumbach like scribbling the script because it's like, it felt less like a legitimate dialogue and more like I could feel the hand of the writer in there. But that was kind of rare. I thought that it was great acting. Generally, I love the movie, and yeah, I liked it a lot. Jason Webster 9300 says, which 5 films do you recommend as having the best editing or cinematography? Well, again, ranking is tough. I mean, Citizen Kane is a basic answer as far as cinematography and editing, honestly, but especially for its time, it was very revolutionary. Double Indemnity, I think, is a beautifully shot film. One of the best examples of film noir ever made. There Will Be Blood, for me, both filming and cinematography, I think fantastic examples of both. Editing and cinematography, both fantastic examples of both. Those are the ones that jump to mind. Yeah, I'm sorry. See, that's the thing, is like I need like 10, 15 minutes to sit down and like really catalog that in my head, because those are the ones that jump out to me though right away. Adeline Hudson says, what 2026 movie are you most excited for? For me, it's Sheep in the Box. I can't say I don't really know that much about Sheep in the Box. I keep getting asked this, and I always have an answer that I forget to say until after the show. But I'll say Dune Part 3, just because I want to know what Denis Villeneuve does with that story. That's very interesting to me. And I think there's probably another one that I can't remember right now that I'm more excited for. But I am very excited to see Dune Part 3. Boomer Bus says, pitch your ideal movie theater membership program. Honestly, I think AMC's is pretty bang on. I think the price has obviously gone up, but if you use A-List twice a month, then it really pays for itself. I think no matter where you live in the world, in the country, and it's 3 movies a week. The premium formats are included. I think that AMC A-List is actually a great example of a movie membership program that works pretty well. It seems like the value is good. It's sustainable. Maybe I would increase the concession discount. I think that an ideal movie membership program should also give you a discount on concessions. Cinemark's program, actually, I guess it would be a hybrid of AMC's and Cinemark's, because Cinemark's did give you a discount concession. So I would say, I think the model of the admissions for AMC A-List are great. 3 movies a week, premium formats included. And I would add to that maybe a 25% discount on concessions. So it would motivate people who are going to the movies more than anybody else to also buy snacks, because you're giving them a break there as well. So yeah, just add that concession discount. And I think AMC's got it pretty bang on. Superhero Fan 198 says, thoughts on the popularity surge of anime in the 2020s and the recent box office successes of a couple anime movies, IP based or not. I think that anime and I could be wrong here. I mean, I know that Crunchyroll existed prior to the big streaming boom, but that was really for anime fans. You kind of already had to be a fan of anime um, to jump into Crunchyroll. I think that the rise of streaming and particularly Netflix, and I think the pandemic helped, and also Disney Plus and other places that have series, but like Netflix with Avatar: The Last Airbender and with Demon Slayer, the fact that it got a global distribution platform on a streaming service that a lot of people already had. I think that has been part of it. Part of it is also the globalization of the film industry. So, South Korean cinema has done better and better here in the United States. Movies like Godzilla minus zero and now in Godzilla minus one coming up are getting better and better distribution. But I think that streaming specifically made anime so much more accessible to people here in the U.S. and around the world that's why we've seen it explode in the way that it has. I mean, even series like Jujutsu Kaisen and stuff like that. Once you find it, then you're more inclined to go to a Crunchyroll or something and seek it out. So I think that streaming has really done a lot for anime in the last 5 to 6 years, and the pandemic a lot too, because people were home and they were watching more. Wesley Petrelli says, as the champion of the Schmodown and movie fights, what was more fun for you to play? Not going to lie, that Andrew Guy match was legendary. Maybe not your best. Absolutely not my best. It was one of my worst matches. I understand. I love that people love that match. It was one of my least favorite Schmodown memories, but I acknowledge that it was a great moment for the Schmodown. What was more fun to play? They're so different. I love what kind of puts it over the top for me is I love the live, especially the live audience element of the Schmodown when we would go on the road to do it. I love doing that in front of a crowd. That was so much fun. And so I think that probably tips it over for me. And also that so much of the Schmodown was a collaborative. So movie fights, you're doing it by yourself. The Schmodown, if I'm on a team, I have a teammate, and then the faction era, I had a whole group of people that could help you study, and even just to go there, on a shoot day, there were so many people there instead of just 4 or 5 people there for movie fights. I love the social element of the Schmodown. I love doing it in front of a live crowd. So I would say that the Schmodown was maybe a little bit more fun to play, but I love both of those games. And movie fights for me is fun in a different way. It's kind of more of an intellectual challenge, more of a strategy challenge of like, okay, how can I structure this argument in a way that I think I'm going to win, and then think on the fly to combat other people. So it's a different game, and I kind of like that it's more, the Schmodown is checkers and movie fights is chess. Ryan Schuler says, any chance of Movie Pass outbidding Paramount for WB? I mean, they can try if they want to, but I don't know if they're going to succeed. I'd love to see that, though. Just a few more questions left. I didn't know how long the show was going to be, but you guys have a lot of great questions. Jack Bauer 1350 says, I should probably put this on the screen. I'm curious about the new Stargate that's planned for Amazon. What do you think? Will it be a better continuation than the new Star Trek we've got in the past years? I mean, I've seen the first Stargate movie. It's been a long time. I never watched like Stargate SG-1 or any of the shows that were on, so I'm not a huge Stargate fan. But I think that it's got the fan base there. To me, it feels like Battlestar Galactica in that there's enough people that remember it that you have a fan base. But I also think it's a franchise that if you do it right and really make it more than just something that is a nostalgia thing for the people that like it, I think it's got potential and it's got the resources there. So why not Stargate? Elliot Paul Jonker says, hello, Dan from Sydney, Australia. Why do you think we see so many filmmakers break out inside the horror space? I saw Obsession last night. It should be illegal to be that young and talented. GD. Why do I think? Well, here's what I think. I think it's because the barrier to entry for especially a young filmmaker, who a studio might be less inclined to give a young filmmaker $50 million or $60 million to make an action movie, but to give a young filmmaker $3 or $4 million to make a horror movie, or it's also easier to do, I think, horror, especially kind of small scale horror on YouTube, which is what we're seeing with Backrooms and we saw with Lights Out and stuff. I think that horror is a genre that operates really well on low budgets and always has. And so I think that it's easier to break out because the horror community is so passionate and is also so supportive to talent that they see. So if you have a short online that's a horror short, I think it's more likely to get popular, to get virality. And it's also less of a risk for a studio to say, okay, we'll give you $4 million to make that movie, or sometimes even less. So I think it's just the scale of it. And I love that. I love that horror filmmakers have always been doing great things with a very small amount of resources. And that goes back to John Carpenter and Halloween, and even before that. And that's great. I love a director that can create atmosphere. And that's another thing, is atmosphere is such an important thing in a horror movie. And if you have a director that knows that and can create that atmosphere, it takes you so much further than in other genres. Grace Kelly 2733 says, can you answer now or make a video of best films from the last half decade, 2020 to 2025? I definitely can't answer now. That would be, I'd have to sit down for an hour and try to do that. I don't know if I think I might have thought about doing a video about that at the end of last year, but I could not answer that now, unfortunately. Maybe a video, but I feel like if I was going to do that, it would have come at the end of last year. That would be tough to do. Adeline Hudson says, do you have any recommendations of good Brazilian films? I've only seen City of God, I'm Still Here, Central Station, The Secret Agent, Bacurau, Aquarius, The Second Mother, and Marighella. Well, I think you've seen more than me. I can't really recommend more other than those titles, at least none that come to mind. So you saw the ones that I've seen that are all fantastic films. Superhero Fan 198 says, outside of Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Chainsaw Man, have you dabbled into other anime series like Attack on Titan, Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, or JoJo? Yeah, I watched Attack on Titan. A lot of people have asked me about Attack on Titan. That's another one where I really loved the beginning of it, and then it kind of lost me in the middle a little bit. And then I thought the ending was pretty good, but I had already sort of, number one, kind of drifted a little bit in the middle, and number two, was trying to remember and put the pieces together by the end, that it didn't have a huge impact on me. But Attack on Titan, at its best, is some of the best anime I've ever seen. And then to me, it just sort of got lost in the weeds. This is, I believe, our last question, unless another one. Nope, we have one more coming in after this. So please send in your last questions now, because we're at almost 2 hours, and actually I'm out of water, and I got a little bit of water left, but I didn't anticipate this many questions today. Geek Factor says, hey, Dan, thanks for the kind words last week regarding my divorce situation. Felt good for a second. Do you think that the BS around the Odyssey might hurt it at the box office? Well, it depends on if it's BS or not. I mean, that's the other thing. My whole thing last week was just because I thought that people were hyper fixating on some things in the trailer, and it's like, go see the movie. Now, if it turns out that the trailer itself is indicative of other flaws that are present throughout the whole film, then sure, because that could impact the quality of the movie. Maybe there are some people that might be less inclined to go see the Odyssey, but really, I think the way that culture and society works, if there are people that are super hating on the Odyssey, or rooting for it to fail, or don't like what they see, they're going to want to confirm that when the movie comes out. So I almost think that the people that hate it the most are going to be the ones that want to see it first, because they want to validate their feelings on that, or maybe say, oh, okay, no, it was overblown. So I think it's only going to hurt the box office if it does translate into issues with the film itself, which it may. One of my big points last week was just kind of like, well, okay, let's just wait and see. All right, this is the last question, so please don't send any more, because we're going to wrap up the show after this. Real Serious says, greetings from Argentina. Given it's becoming kind of an anthology, who would you want to take on an Evil Dead film? I thought Damien Rugna, the director of When Evil Lurks, could be a pretty good fit. That's a good question. I'm not as encyclopedic on horror directors. I think it should be kind of an up and coming horror director. I mean, the Philippus from Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. I would kind of love to see their take on an Evil Dead movie. Some of their movies have sort of gone into that realm, into that genre. And then there is a movie called Leviticus. I'm going to keep plugging Leviticus because I thought it was really good, that I saw at Sundance. And the director of that movie is, pulling it up right now, Adrian Chiarella, who directed Leviticus, which is coming out this summer. I think would be a really good fit with Evil Dead, because there's some stuff in Leviticus that I think would work great in the Evil Dead franchise. So those are my two picks. Let's see. I'm just going to do a quick pass here with the other comments and see. Hey, Dan, greetings from Mexico. Any particular reason why you went for a stereo sound bar instead of surround sound for your home theater? Cost and installation. And I'm happy with the stereo sound bar that I have. So yeah, I'd say cost and just not wanting to install a full thing in my house. And it actually worked out with moving and everything. It just was easier to do a sound bar. Brian Whitlock, my daughter's definitely started watching anime on Netflix and now watch more Crunchyroll than any other streaming service. Let's see. Amosick Eaton update. You can get 4 movies with the top tier of A-list. Love it. That's right. I forgot AMC also did more movies. Cinemark's discount is 20% off concessions. That's right. I really like that with Cinemark. And I did buy more concessions for me because you got that discount. So yes, add that 20% discount. Let's see. Jason Webster, I've always seen I Saw the Devil as a crime revenge thriller and not a horror film. Horror is one of those things that's just like, it's so, the genre blending between the two is so, it's so hard to judge what's horror and what's not, because I've had to do that on charts a lot. So let's see. I'm just kind of cycling through, see if anything jumps out at me, but we've also been doing this for a while. So Acres of Movies left me several comments. So let's pick one here. I want to answer one from Acres of Movie. Let's see. And then that'll be our last one. Oh, come on. I'm doing this with my left hand because I stupidly moved this mic stand. So I have to use my non-dominant hand. And now here we go. Acres of Movie said, if you had your own movie festival, what would be 3 movies you would highlight for that? What would you call the genre, and who would you invite for panels? Well, of course, I picked a multi-part question. That's going to be hard for me to pick. If I had my own movie festival, what would be 3 movies that I would highlight for that? Jeez, why did I pick this question? It's a great question for you to ask. It's just hard for me to answer off the top of my head. I mean, I think it would just have to be my favorite. So I'd probably pick Shaun of the Dead. I would probably pick, because I love that movie. I'd probably pick a movie like Shattered Glass. Shaun of the Dead, Shattered Glass, because I think that's an overlooked movie from many years ago. And then probably one of my all-time favorites. So maybe a movie like Network, or a movie like something from Billy Wilder, The Apartment, maybe. I don't know if it'd be a particular genre, but it would just be movies that I think are great. So, oh boy, I opened up a beehive. So please don't send in any more questions, because I just wanted to answer one from the comment section, but I got one more super chat. So this will be the last question. Elliot Paul Jonker says the reported budget for Obsession is $900,000. Speaking of atmosphere, it was almost a constant state of tension. Really, really powerful work. Yeah, I've heard so many good things about Obsession. I think I'm going to have to go see it this weekend. And then if I really like it, then you could very well see a review for that here on the channel. Okay, that is going to be the end of our show for today. Thank you to everybody. I handed the show over to you, and you did not disappoint with some great questions. So thank you to everybody that sent in a question. Thank you to everybody that was in the chat and that tuned in and that is tuning in after the show. If you're not a fan of the channel, that's okay. But if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when I upload a new video. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.